Hey guys, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, hope you're having a wonderful time. Today I want to talk with you about window shopping. This Christmassy romance novel by Tessa Bailey was published in 2021 and it's the one and only Christmas book I am willing to subject myself to this year. Those who know me know that I don't usually entertain the idea of reading seasonal books as they tend to offer more holiday spirit than actual substance. But if you yourself have read any actually riveting Christmas novels, please do let me know. You will save me from a future headache. That being said, as per usual, we will start this video with a short synopsis, then proceed to the non-spoiler review and wrap this video up with the spoilers. If you haven't read window shopping yet, then do not worry. I will make sure to let you know when the spoilers begin. So in this dual POV novel, we are following Stella and Aiden. Stella is a young woman with a pretty difficult past, which still haunts her to this day, making it difficult for her to find a job she loves or open up to people. She used to be bad news, your typical out-of-control teenage girl who took things a little too far and is still paying the price. Meanwhile, Aiden is the definition of goody two-shoes. Someone well-educated, well-behaved, and with every possible advantage in life. Now, it's important to point out that he is not spoiled, nor is he posh. He is just so damn nice. And while Stella and Aiden do not seem to have anything in common, Stella is desperate for a chance to prove herself at her dream job, and Aiden is that person who can make it happen. Alright, so when I first read the synopsis of Window Shopping that is available on Goodreads, this book sounded to me like the most cliched romance novel ever put to paper. And well, it kinda is. There were parts of this novel that I can honestly say that I have enjoyed, and there were other parts that I definitely hated. But in the spirit of holidays, I decided to not choose a wine or tea side for this video and make myself a delicious cup of hot cocoa instead. And before we jump into our spoiler review and talk about the actual plot of the novel, let's talk at the positives and the negatives this novel has to offer. When it comes to the positives, right from the get-go, I was very much intrigued by this whole sunshine and grumpy reversed roles idea. So often in books, we see female leads who are just so full of life and optimism, who have the energy to carry the whole world on their shoulders without ever letting anything bring them down. At the same time, we often see them paired up with men who are definition of traditional masculinity. Real men's men. In a sense, that's just somewhat of a gender expectation. We like reading about wholehearted, traditionally feminine women the same way we like reading about men who are tough and serious and only have a soft spot for this one particular woman. It's hard to argue that there is a certain charm to it. I mean, Tessa's own It Happened One Summer, which follows this exact trope, is probably her most popular book to date. So I was without a doubt very curious to see how the author will pull off this same trope with reversed gender roles. And in my eyes, she did a pretty good job when building Stella's and Aiden's individual characters. I would even go as far as to say that their individual storylines were the strongest part of this novel. Stella might be a little too pessimistic at times, a little too cautious and standoffish, yet at the same time we were given all the explanations needed to understand what life experiences influence her to put up these walls, to feel skeptical about people's intentions. And Aiden is a sweet cupcake who wants to only see good in people and make everyone happy. He always plays by the rules, puts other people's needs above his own, and rocks a vast collection of bow ties. Yet he never feels weak. Others respect him and often admire him for these qualities. In addition to that, Tessa Bailey is, as per usual, great at building chemistry and sexual tension between the main leads. And I guess most importantly, Window Shopping did provide me with a much needed Christmas spirit without being too on the nose about the fact that the novel is actually set in Christmas time. To be honest, I read it a couple of months before Christmas, and in the middle of it, I did feel the need to put my Kindle aside and start making a Christmassy to-do list, which in my opinion is definitely a plus. Now, when it comes to the negatives of window shopping, some plot points made no sense and the novel overall felt very easily predictable. The author tried to subvert the reader's expectations by introducing plot points that are much deeper than one would expect from a cheesy Christmas romance novel, but in my opinion, basically none of these plot points actually stuck the landing. I will make sure to talk about this a little bit more in detail in the spoilers section of this video. But to explain it simply, in a sense it felt like either Bailey wanted to give us a story with more substance, yet had to restrain herself in order to fit into this mold of what the reader wants a Christmas love story to be, or she wanted to make her story appear to be more original than the others, yet couldn't be bothered to actually spend the time exploring the storylines she herself created. Another big issue I have with window shopping is that while Tessa Bailey is great at describing the physical connection between the leads, the emotional or intellectual one, at least for me, was severely lacking. Can't say that there was a single time in this novel where I could honestly feel that I buy Stella's and Aiden's relationship. I was told that these two share this big and life-changing connection, but all I could see is a physical attraction and maybe a pretty good foundation for a friendship, which in time could turn into a strong relationship. However, by the end of this novel, this undying love was still nowhere to be found. But that's an issue I have with pretty much all Insta love stories. I always end up knowing that the leads are soulmates that can't live without each other. I just always struggle to understand why. Overall, this book is very much hit or miss depending on what you are looking for in a Christmassy novel. If you're looking for a funny, steamy, and at times nauseatingly cute love story, which does offer a little different plot angles than your typical holiday romance, yet it's simple enough that you can read and keep your eye on the TV at the same time, then Window Shopping is a book for you. And if you are looking for something with more substance, something a little more slow burn, something that would allow itself the time needed to grow the relationship of the main leads while also fully fleshing out the side plot lines, then I'm afraid that Window Shopping might leave you a tad disappointed. That being said, let's move to the spoiler review so we could talk about the plot of the novel in a little more detail. If you haven't read Window Shopping yet, but you feel like it is something you might want to do, now it's a great time for you to click off this video. So before we start getting into the details of the novel, let's get a few things clear. Is it rather problematic that Aiden is Stella's employer? Yes. Would it be very creepy in real life to know that the only reason you were given an opportunity to get this job is because your boss has hots for you? Yeah, absolutely. But do I really care about all that? Well, no, because this is a simple, stupidish romance novel that's purpose is to entertain and provide with a little bit of escapism and holiday spirit. And to be honest, instead of brushing over the fact that there is a power imbalance between the main leads, the author actually leaned into it and turned it into a rather big part of the novel, into the big reason why Aiden and Stella cannot be together, the big problem they have to overcome. I mean, I really liked how both of them had truly legitimate reasons to stay away from one another. Aiden not wanting to start anything with Stella without signing the proper paperwork, which would remove him from the position where he could legally influence any work-related decisions when it comes to her, makes a lot of sense. Because starting a clandestine relationship, even if it is just a casual hookup, even if it's consensual, would put his and his company's reputation at risk. Meanwhile, Stella is also right not wanting to sign the contract, as that would instantly put her into a serious, relatively public relationship with Aiden, a thing she's absolutely not ready for. When I read about their dilemma, I was so absolutely sure that I'm about to get a slow burn story in which we will get to follow our main leads getting to know each other on an intellectual level, which would lead into them developing actual feelings, and then Stella feeling confident enough to sign the papers. But instead we got Aiden losing his cool multiple times just so he could prove to Stella that he's not nearly as vanilla as she imagines him to be, and consequently we are left to pretend that Stella agreed to sign the contract not because they both really wanted to get into each other's pants, but because they felt so secure in this idea that their attraction goes well beyond physical, even though when you really think about it, the novel doesn't provide any actual evidence of that. And that's just one of the examples how Tessa Bailey chose to incorporate multiple serious issues into this novel without actually giving them attention they, in my opinion, deserve. I loved the idea of getting a female lead who is trying to build a life after getting out of prison. I loved the idea of seeing her struggles. I thought it's a super interesting storyline to integrate into a regular romance novel. So when I started this book with a scene in which Stella basically proved her ability to do the job she knows she is unable to get because of her criminal record, I got excited to say the least. That seemed like such an interesting storyline to explore. Just how heartbreaking and honestly demotivating it can be when you know that you will be passed on a job you love and you know you could be excellent at without as much as a second thought just because you need to tick a box on your resume. But then in a matter of pages, Stella gets hired purely because Aiden wants to see her again, and he believes that giving her a job will also give him an opportunity to become a part of her life. And yes, you could argue and say that he was impressed with Stella's ability to do the work before he got to know about her criminal record, and that is absolutely true, but it's also true that there's no way Aiden would have gone out of his way to meet every single candidate for an interview, nor he would have offered her the position despite her criminal record if he would have not had a crush on her in the first place. I mean, the man didn't even bother to wait long enough to get to know her before suggesting they sign the contract, which would allow him to legally take her out. So yeah, I'm sure a lot of people who have spent time in prison can relate to this. It's not that these people are struggling to find a job with criminal record. It's about them not being able to find a rich person who wants to get in their pants badly enough to offer them the job. While we're speaking about the issues one faces after serving time, I loved how well Tessa showed that if you have a criminal record, in certain situations your word just stops holding the same weight it used to. This particular thing was shown so perfectly when the expensive jewelry went missing and Stella was publicly brought in and accused of the theft, which would have been a very interesting situation to explore in more of a detail. Yet the author decided to turn it into Aiden being a hero moment. It's not really about how this injustice and its repercussions affect Stella, but it's the catharsis needed for Aiden to stand up to his family and for Stella to sign the contract which would allow them to legally date. Another opportunity missed. Lastly, this toxic friendship subplot between Stella and Nicole takes up quite a lot of space in this novel. The build-up to Stella revealing to us and to Aiden the extent of just how toxic this friendship is was actually executed pretty great. The backstory of how Stella ended up in prison, the calls from Nicole that put her into near panic, the mixed thoughts and feelings she still harbors about this friendship. All of that was wonderful. I would argue that to me, Stella's and Nicole's relationship as childhood friends felt much more real than her and Aiden's relationship as romantic partners did. And then everything with this storyline in particular ended up being rushed and illogical and quite frankly disappointing. First of all, can anyone explain to me how Nicole got released from prison this early? I mean, the book takes the time to tell us that Stella is secretly a good guy who simply made a mistake. She's the one who didn't know that the guns were real. She's the one who stayed behind after the robbery and took care of the man who was shot, and consequently because of that she got a more lenient sentence. And due to good behavior, she was released from prison early, as in earlier than the original time she was supposed to be released, which should have still been earlier than Nicole's. And yet Nicole, who actually shot a guy and ran away from the scene, was released from prison just 2 or so months after Stella. Well, that just doesn't add up. And after Nicole is being released and after she and Stella reunite, instead of any actual confrontation after so much build-up, everything is basically fixed with one conversation in which Stella tells Nicole that she is willing to help her as long as she respects her life and her boundaries. That's it. Done. I guess Stella doesn't need any therapy to understand this codependent relationship, and I guess Nicole, a controlling narcissist, suddenly understood the error of her ways and is now completely ready to change. Life is easy if you live in a romance novel, I guess. Overall, I have to admit that despite my appreciation for Tessa Bailey, window shopping felt rather rushed. Stella getting her dream job so easily, her and Aiden admitting their feelings to one another and getting together, Nicole showing up, and Lovebirds taking a break before quickly getting back together just so that the novel could end on a positive note. Unfortunately for me, it kind of felt like a draft of a novel and not the end result. All that being said, Window Shopping is not a bad romance novel. I know it sounds ridiculous since I spent all of the spoiler review complaining about it, but it was interesting enough. It was entertaining enough and romantic enough. And I only complain because in my eyes the novel had what it needed to be great. It just failed executing the ideas that the author herself set up. But that's just my opinion. What about yours?